Hi folks, HR Funk here, with the first installment in my last group of 10 law enforcement firearms qualification courses. Now, if you've not seen any of the videos in this series, what I'm attempting to do is to fire a law enforcement firearms qualification course from each of the 50 states for the purpose of comparing and contrasting those courses and ultimately trying to determine what I think is the best law enforcement firearms qualification course in the country. Now, this series does focus on duty handgun qualifications, and today's duty handgun qualification course comes to us from the state of Vermont. Vermont uses a 36-round course of fire to qualify law enforcement officers in that state, and the course is divided into 6 different stages. Now, just like always, I will explain each stage before I shoot it so you know what you're about to see. And one of the things that's a little bit different with the Vermont course is each stage of fire has its own qualification standard. For example, the first stage requires 6 shots to be fired, and the officer has to have all 6 shots in the proper scoring area. Now, in terms of scoring, the target, I'm hoping this is not going to be too dark for you to be able to see the shot holes in here. I'm a little worried about that on the camera. But there is a scoring area inside the target that is defined by a line that delineates the preferred scoring area. When I shoot into the target with one of the stages that requires all the rounds, or for example the first one where I have to get 6 of the 6 rounds inside there, all 6 of those rounds have to be in that proper scoring area. Now, some of them have other standards, like one of them down here, it looks like number 3, has a requirement of 4 out of the 6 rounds that are fired in that stage. So I have to make sure that I fire the proper number of rounds into that scoring area on each stage. Now, if a shooter fails to meet one of the criteria for one of these stages, the shooter doesn't fail the entire course. The shooter just has to refire that stage until they get a passing score. So hopefully I won't be refiring anything, but that is the way it's laid out in my course description. Today's challenger marks a first in this series. This is going to be the first H&K pistol that I've used on one of these courses, and this is an H&K P30. This pistol was loaned to me by a viewer to use for one of these courses, so this is the one I decided to use it for. I've not shot an H&K pistol in a long time, so this is going to be something a little unusual for me, but we're going to get things set up and ready to go, and we'll see how the H&K P30 does on the Vermont Law Enforcement Handgun Qualification course. And here we go. The first stage of this Vermont course starts out at a distance of 3 yards from the target. From here, on the signal to fire, the shooter has to draw and fire 2 rounds into the body of the target in a time limit of 3 seconds. This drill is repeated 2 times, so when I'm done, I will have fired 6 rounds on this stage, and the scoring requirement is all 6 of those rounds have to be in the proper scoring area of the target. Now, another thing that's a little unusual with the Vermont course, it allows the shooter to use pretty much whatever type of firing position he or she wants to. For example, in this first one, under the category of shooting position, it says any 2-hand, point shoulder, wrist on hip, or one-handed. So basically any way the shooter wants to shoot it, the shooter can shoot it, so long as they get all the rounds in that proper scoring area of the target. So here we go, let's see what this looks like. And hopefully you can see that on the camera. All those shots are in the proper scoring area. So on we go to stage number 2. Stage 2 of this course is conducted at a distance of 5 yards from the target. And from that distance, the shooter begins with the firearm in the holster, and on a signal to fire, the shooter has to step laterally either to the right or to the left, draw and fire 2 rounds into the body of the target in a time limit of 4 seconds. The shooter then moves back to the center, and on a second signal to fire, the shooter has to move to the opposite direction that he or she moved the first time, again, draw and fire 2 more rounds into the body of the target in that 4-second time limit. Then, once more, the shooter moves back to the center, and on a third signal to fire, the shooter moves either right or left, draws, and fires 2 more rounds into the body of the target in 4 seconds. Now normally the direction the shooter moves the first 2 times is determined by the firearms instructor who's conducting the qualification. Since I'm here by myself, I'm just going to pick one direction or the other to move, draw, and then fire my 2 rounds into the body. Now the qualification standard for this stage of fire is 4 out of the 6 rounds that are fired by the shooter have to be inside that proper scoring area of the target. And all 6 of those rounds stayed within the proper scoring area of the target. For stage 3, I'm back to a distance of 7 yards from the target, and this stage requires the shooter to fire from behind cover. So I'm using my target stand back here as simulated cover, and on the signal to fire, the shooter has to draw and right hand only from the right side of cover fire 2 rounds into the target. Then the shooter transitions to the other side of cover and left-handed only from the left side fires 4 more rounds into the body of the target. The entire drill has a time limit of 15 seconds, and at the end, the shooter has to have 4 out of the 6 rounds inside that preferred scoring area of the target. Well, I did manage to keep 4 out of my 6 rounds in the proper scoring area of the target, so that is a pass on that stage. However, I had 2 shots that are outside of the proper scoring area, and for me that's very unusual, even shooting left-handed, especially from a distance of 7 yards. This really is a reflection of my unfamiliarity with this pistol, and especially the trigger on this H&K pistol is not something I'm accustomed to, and it's really screwing with me, and you can see that with these 2 shots that are being outside that proper scoring area on the target. Stage 4 is also conducted at a distance of 7 yards from the target, and the course description for this stage says the shooter begins with their shooting hand resting on the grip of the firearm while it's in the holster. I've never seen an instruction like that before on one of these course descriptions, so that's a little bit unusual, and it gets more unusual from there. According to the course description, the shooter begins in a standing position, strong hand on the grip of their weapon. On command to fire, the shooter will draw and fire 6 rounds into the target as fast as possible. That's a very strange instruction in my estimation. If anything, I would expect it to say the shooter will fire 6 rounds as fast as accurately possible, or as fast as possible to put accurate shots in the preferred scoring area of the target. I really can't overemphasize the fact that I don't think we should be training people to spray and pray, and that's kind of what this is sounding like. I really don't like this stage at all, and normally I wait till I get to the end and I'm talking about the course as I wrap up the video, but I'm going to throw this in right here because I am not a fan of this stage. Even so, I'll back up to 7 yards, load up with 6 rounds, and I'll fire out this stage. The time limit for this stage is 7 seconds, which is plenty of time to fire 6 rounds from that distance. And the qualification standard is 5 out of the 6 rounds have to be in the proper scoring area of the target. So again, I'll get things loaded up and ready to go, and we'll see what this looks like. Stage number 5 is fired at a distance of 12 yards from the target, and for this stage the shooter begins standing behind cover. On the signal to fire, the shooter has to take a position of cover, draw and fire 4 rounds from the strong side of cover with their strong hand, then perform a mandatory reload behind cover, and from the non-dominant side of cover fire 4 more rounds, all in a time limit of 25 seconds. This has a qualification standard of 5 out of the 8 rounds that have to be inside of that proper scoring area of the target. And all 8 of those shots managed to stay inside the proper scoring area of the target. Sixth and final stage, folks, and this takes place at a distance of 25 yards from the target. On this stage, the shooter begins in an interview position with the firearm in the holster. On the signal to fire, the shooter has to draw and fire 4 rounds into the body of the target. There is no time limit for this stage, so the shooter can take as long as he or she wants to fire 4 rounds from 25 yards. The qualification standard is 3 out of the 4 rounds have to be inside that proper scoring area. And that's the Vermont course, folks. And in the end, there are some things that I like about it. For example, I like the fact that it's broken down into stages and the shooters have to pass each individual stage instead of just passing the overall course, meaning there's not a throwaway stage where somebody can do very poorly, but as long as they do well on the overall course, they still pass. So I like that. I like the fact that there are a lot of skills that are incorporated into this: shooting from behind cover, dominant and non-dominant hand shooting, some long range shooting. So there are positive aspects of this Vermont course, but there are some things about it I really do not like. I don't like the untimed portion from 25 yards. All 4 of my rounds from 25 yards are in the proper scoring area, which is not surprising because I had all day to put them there. I don't like the stage where the instruction to the shooter is to fire the rounds as fast as they can. Again, I cannot overemphasize how much I disagree with the idea of training police officers to spray and pray. That's not what we do. We're responsible for every single round of ammunition, or every single bullet, I should say, that leaves the barrel of our weapon, and we really cannot teach our officers to shoot that way. That is just, again, it boggles my mind that that instruction is in there. The target itself isn't really bad. It's somewhat generous in its proportions. If it was a little bit tighter, some of those stages would be a little bit more difficult. But all in all, I would classify the target as sort of a middle-of-the-road target. And in the end, I don't think this Vermont course is going to be a contender for the top course in the country. And what I would like to see people do with this, the people in Vermont, are take the good aspects of this course and revise it, bring it a little bit more into the realm of what we want our police officers to do and what we're expecting them to be able to do to defend themselves and to defend the people in our communities, and just overall give this course a little bit more thought. And here's one last look at today's challenger, the H&K P30. And at the risk of sounding overly negative today, I guess maybe I'm just having a bad day, I'm sorry, I did not care for this pistol. Now, it functioned flawlessly. There was not a single malfunction, and it doesn't feel bad in the hand, but the trigger on this thing is something that it would take me a long time to get used to it. Even the single action pull is not particularly good. The double action pull is horrendous. I would rather have a good double action revolver than this P30 with that long double action pull that it has. So to the gentleman that loaned me the pistol for the course, thank you very much. I'm not trying to be insulting, but if I had my choice, I would not opt for one of these pistols, either as a duty weapon or to just shoot for fun. And that's the video, folks. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or comments, as always, make sure you forward those to me. Remember, if you order anything from Optics Planet, be sure to use my discount code, which is... And if you use that discount code, it's good for 5% off anything you purchase from Optics Planet. See you next time, folks. And until then, good shooting. Bye-bye.